We're talking Clemson Tigers football on the Ourlads Football Network, Ourlads Football YouTube Channel. I'm Greg DePalma, and if we're talking Clemson Tigers football, that means it's one and only Phil Kornblut from the South Carolina Sports Talk Network. How's it going, Phil?
Doing great, Greg. Looking forward to the start of the season. 2 weeks from tomorrow, we'll be in Atlanta, Clemson and Georgia. Huge game for both teams. Probably more so for the Tigers, considering their preseason ranking is way down compared to what Georgia is. So, Tigers can ill afford an early loss if they want to make the college football playoffs this year.
I think this is one of those situations where, considering the opponent, that now with 11 FBS Power 5 teams going to the postseason, possibility of 11, more than likely 11 out of the 12, that if Clemson were to have only two losses, and one of them was to Georgia, and it was a halfway competitive game, and they win the ACC championship, I think they'd still make the playoffs.
Safe to say that. That means if what you're suggesting comes true, that means along the way they will have beaten NC State and they will have beaten Florida State on the road. Thing about Clemson is
one of them. You could still split one of them. You know, if you think about that.
You could.
And then run the table.
Of course, it would put you. It would. Yeah. Well, if you lose to Georgia, and then you lose to Florida State or NC State.
Yep.
You still have, that'd be two losses. You could run the table. But you need help. You would need help, of course. They got to go to Tallahassee, so that'll be a really, really difficult game for them as well. Look, this Clemson team, when you look at them on paper, they basically have the materials to win every game. But they also have some unproven areas that lead you to have some reservations about them winning every game. And that's why, it's been 10 years, 2014, since Clemson was preseason ranked as lowly as they are, this year by the AP and the coaches, 14th. So the national perception of Clemson has slipped.
Sure.
The Tigers were always 1, 2, 3, 4 in that conversation with Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, whoever the flavor of the year happens to be. But they've got to go back out and reprove themselves. There's no question about it as far as the national perception is concerned. Yep.
Yeah, and I think this would be interesting, and I would hope for the fans' sake that we're just going to use Clemson as an example, of course, here. If that were to happen, let's say they lose to Georgia, they would lose another game, they run the table, they have two losses, they win the ACC title game, and they get in, that would be a really good thing for the fans, because it would say to the fans, hey, don't worry, because these programs are still going to put these big-time matchups on their schedule because they know it won't hurt them as much. Because really, if you think about it, let's say Clemson loses to Georgia, loses one game, and they're done, loses one other game, and then they don't get invited, then it's almost like them saying, well, why would I do that? Why would I add Georgia on my schedule? Then I'm right back where we started, where I can't lose another football game the whole season. So I think they would let them in, but again, you never know. But I think that would get it done, and I certainly hope that would be the case, because again, nobody wants to see these types of matchups go away, because this is going to be a great matchup.
Now, keep in mind, they kept Florida State out last year with no losses. So,
yeah. Well, that was 4 teams, though. But yes, I understand.
But,
yes.
Yeah, and of course, they lost their quarterback, which was the big blow against them. But you never know what the committee's going to do. Year in and year out, they have not stuck. This has been one of the big complaints. They have not stuck with a steady formula.
Yeah.
The recipe seems to change with the delegates inside that room. So who knows what it'll look like here with the 12 team. And if you've got two losses, but they were to the right people and they were close games and you did the rest of your work, that might still be good enough to get you in. Heck, you might have 3 losses for a team who could still get into the playoffs. Again, it's all subjective.
Yep.
They'll have a bunch of data in there, and they'll go over that, and they'll look at the schedules, and they'll weigh this against that. But when you boil it down, it's an opinion. It's the opinion of those people in that room, this team versus that team, who deserves to get in and who doesn't.
And that's why it's good that now there's 11 possibilities in the FBS Power 5 or Power 4 now, instead of just 4. So now if they make a mistake here or there, I don't care what anybody says. I know they're talking about, well, they're still going to complain if it's 11 or 12. You know what? If you're complaining at 11, nobody really cares. So except the team that gets knocked out if they're the 12th team. But this, of course,
they're not going to sit at 12. They're going to eventually go to 16, and then they'll probably go to 24. They'll look at the FCS playoffs and see that they've got 24 in the FCS playoffs, I believe. So they're not going to sit still. They're going to look at the TV ratings, and they're going to see that TV ratings are very high.
Boom.
They're going to look at the ticket sales and see that the fans are buying the tickets. They're going to say, why not more for others? The more the merrier. So, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the ticket sales would be like for that group of 5 team. That's going to be the interesting one, either at home or on the road. What kind of ticket sales do they get? I'm not that I think that, of course, as long as they're getting a sold out stadiums for all the power teams, which are the majority of the playoffs, of course, they're not going to care what one team does. But I'd be interested in that, and I hope that they would get. Because you never know. I mean, it could be one of these teams like San Diego State, and they don't normally get great attendance. And you would hope that if they have one of those home playoff games in the first game, in the first round, that the fans would show up and it would make it, the spectacle that it needs to be. But either way, I think the playoffs are going to be a huge success this season. I think the fans are going to eat this thing up.
Well, probably so, because we're addicted to it, right? We can't get enough. But keep in mind that when it goes to the playoff system for those games, those ticket prices are going to be exorbitant, I would imagine. So now you've already asked your fan base to buy season tickets and buy, regular season tickets and fund NIL and continue to give to the scholarship organizations. Keep asking and asking for more. And now, here comes a playoff game with but it's going to cost you $150 a ticket. And will your club status, will that get you a better ticket? I'm not sure yet how schools are going to handle distributing the tickets. So there'll be some griping about that. And I'm sure students will not be getting student tickets. I mean, they're going to have to pay. That's what they do for FCS. When a team hosts an FCS playoff games, the students don't get free tickets or any sort of reduced ticket. They have to pay the NCAA listed price. So now this is the college football playoff running this, not the NCAA. The NCAA runs the FCS playoffs, but I'm sure they'll follow the same model. Yeah. So will there be, maybe this first year, because it's unique and playoff game on campus and it sounds like a great big deal, people probably gobble those tickets up. But time after time, we'll see if that continues.
Have they ever had a situation, or do you think in this situation that, and I'm not necessarily going to point to one specific school, but let's just say there's a team that's got a game at home and for whatever reason, they're just they're not coming close to selling out. Any way that, like, within 24 hours, 36 hours before kickoff, that they would say, like, they would drop the ticket prices for the student body and say, well, we're not going to sell this out anyway, but we really would like to have this stadium sold out. So let's just give these kids discounts to get the heck in that stadium.
Well, this is all new territory. Maybe an outside company. A lot of times an outside company, like the NFL, a company will buy up tickets so a blackout can be lifted. Also keep in mind, too, that all these home games are going to be played when students are gone. They're all going to be played during Christmas break.
Yeah.
So how many students are going to leave home and come back? Yeah. Are you going to have to rely on the general public to buy up most of the tickets because the students aren't going to be around? This is kind of an experimental year. We're going to learn a lot of things from this first go around.
Let me pop up the latest depth chart from Ourlads on Clemson, and I'm sure they're not going to be precise here since it is college football, but they do a great job, as good as anyone. And I've been thinking about how I realize this is really interesting, how not just ranking wise, but overall, the consensus seems to be, well, Clemson's slipping. Dabo doesn't want to do the transfers. Look at the way that they're played the last couple of years. It's over. It's over at Clemson. He's behind the times, and that's it. End of story. Yet when I look at the talent that they have, it's just a matter now of whether or not, as you mentioned, it's really just a matter of now of can a Cabe Klubnik, can he take that next step? Can he come through in the big games at the clutch moments? He's done that on occasion, but on other occasions, not so much. So can he be that next, can he step up a bit? Not necessarily an NFL quarterback, but a really good college quarterback that might be able to win us a few big games, get us in the playoffs, maybe win a round, and show that Clemson's not dead after all. Do you think that they do have that talent on the team in order to accomplish that?
Well, so much is on the shoulders of Klubnik going into this season. We've seen enough of him through 1.5 seasons to have an idea of what he is. Now, the word coming out of the camp from Dabo Swinney and others is that he is a more mature player. He's a better leader. He has a better understanding of the offense, a better grasp on decision making. That's been sort of the knock against him, his decision making the wrong decision at the wrong time. And in some cases, like in the Miami game, just totally going against what the coach told him to do when they sent in the play. So that has kind of gotten Clemson fans on edge. What kind of, are you going to get good Klubnik or are you going to get bad Klubnik when he's out there? He's got the skills. I mean, he runs well. He's got a good, strong arm. Can he put the entire package together? If he does, you put him together with Phil Maffa, their big of giving you 25 carries in a game and 100+ yards. He was nearly 1,000-yard rusher last season. You put that together, and then you look at their wide receivers. Adam Randall's been having an excellent preseason camp. Tyler Brown was an unexpected star last season, somebody you didn't think a lot about, and they expect more out of him. They've got 2 freshmen, Bryant Wesco, and they have another freshman, TJ Moore, who they're very high on both of those guys. In particular, I think Wesco has really stood out in training camp and has a chance to be a big-time early contributor. And then Cole Turner is back. If he can stay healthy, he gives them that guy in the slot, and Troy Stellato as well. So they've got good weapons there. They love their tight ends, Brenningstool and the freshman Bettencourt, Josh Sapp, a veteran. They love those guys. And then up front, it's a veteran group that just has to play better across the board and stay healthy. The center position was the one unanswered position going in the camp, and it looks like Ryan Lithicum is going to emerge as the guy there. Walker Parks has played a lot of ball for them. He's been a little bit banged up, but he's the right guard. Blake Miller's a veteran at right tackle. Marcus Tate is the left guard, and Tristan Lee is the left tackle. They've all played a lot of ball for them. So on paper, it looks pretty good for them on offense if the quarterback can put it all together and give them the kind of high-level performance that, is required of every team this day and age. So much rides on the back of the quarterback, and to this point, he really hasn't delivered in a consistent manner. Take the last 7 or 8 minutes of the bowl game to come from behind win that they had in the Gator Bowl last year, and you see a terrific quarterback, a guy who made all kind of big plays and helped rally them from a deficit against Kentucky. But then again, it was some of his plays and his performance that kind of got them in that hole to begin with.
Yeah.
So they just need more consistency, more high-level consistency out of him, and they'll be fine on offense.
Yeah, the injuries were really all across the board. That's the thing, again, that I think, a lot of the fans and analysts just want to poo-poo or not even consider. But that had a lot to do with why Clemson just wasn't the same. And again, Klubnik was Klubnik, but things could have been better if they were a healthier group. Starting with that offensive line, as you mentioned, of course, Tate went out late in the year. Parks was out. early in the year. But the offensive line, I mean, Miller is getting a lot of accolades. So it seems like a typical, really strong offensive line. Now, Maffa becomes the man. He was rotating with Shipley last year, the whole, speed power duo. Now it's power. And do you think Maffa winds up being the workhorse, or do they have another guy that they want to kind of try to slip in and feel that they can take over the role for Shipley?
Yeah, and let me mention one more wide receiver I didn't mention, Antonio Williams, who was one of those injured parties last year. He's healthy, and when healthy, he gives them a really good receiver as well. Maffa is going to be the primary workhorse. Keith Adams Jr. has had a good camp and has drawn the attention of Dabo Swinney. He really likes him. He really likes his style of running. David Izumi Omumi, who is a freshman, will have a chance to carry the football, or perhaps Jay Haynes. Those are their top guys, but a bit of a drop-off. I mean, when it comes to experience and actually producing, it's a big drop-off because Maffa is the only one in that group. He's the only one in that room who has experience and who has produced as a running back for them. So we'll see what happens. They do like Adams. Izumi Omi is a guy with a lot of talent coming out of high school, and Haynes has been in the program now a couple of years, and they like what he can do. So somebody's going to have to step up and give Maffa a bit of a break. I don't know if it'll be Adams first. My guess it would be, at this point in time, Adams would be running back 2, and probably Haynes running back 3 would be my guess at this point.
All right. From 3 to 2. Okay, so let's talk about those receivers. So again, this is injuries. You talked about Williams, and I got to tell you, and maybe this is the selling point that really helps Dabo with the whole no transfer deal. That hey, if you're a really good freshman, true freshman, you're gonna play, because I've been doing this now for several weeks, and I haven't seen any team so far that had as many true freshmen that produced as much as Clemson. And wide receiver, I mean, you mentioned Williams. So he leads the team as a true freshman in 2022 as the top yard getter, 604 yards, then misses most of last year. Then you've got Turner, who has the big ACC title game in 2022 as a freshman. Then he misses most of 2023. Then you got a true freshman last year, as you mentioned, Brown. He led the team in yards with 531. Those are 3 freshmen, 2 true freshmen. I believe I don't think Turner was a true, but maybe I'm wrong at the time. But Williams and Brown, true freshmen. Now you're talking about Wesco and Moore, 2 true freshmen who could end up getting some playing time this year. And this is just from the wide receivers, and I've got others that we'll go into. So that receiving unit is really as deep. Now, I don't know if they've got a superstar, but it really is as deep as I've seen it there.
And don't forget Adam Randall, who was
Adam Randall
in and out last year with injuries. He had a knee the previous year, I believe. So he's been dealing with that. So, do they have a Sammy Watkins? Do they have a Nuke Hopkins? Do they have a Higgins in there, or any of the other outstanding receivers? What hurt them was they signed some receivers after that terrific group left, and they signed some receivers who, at least in recruiting, looked like they were going to be comparable to that previous high-level group, and they just didn't pan out for them across the board. And they all ended up transferring out for one reason or another. And so they've had to go basically and rebuild their wide receivers room. Randall was a big-time prospect. They've hit on him. I mean, he's a good player when healthy. He can do a lot of good things for them. Williams was a big-time recruit. When healthy, he can do a lot of good things. Tyler Brown was not heavily recruited. He was the last guy they took in that recruiting class, and he turned out to be just a godsend for them last year. Stellato just can't stay healthy. In fact, Dabo Swinney said yesterday after the scrimmage, he said he's gimpy again. He's been dealing with leg injuries his entire career at Clemson. So they've really, when healthy, he stood out last year. He made some big catches. They just can't keep him healthy. There's a kid named Tink Kelly you want to keep an eye on. He's from over at Daniel, and he's got really good speed. And he's a guy that is getting a look in camp and might help him out some. We mentioned Wesco and TJ Moore. That was this year's recruiting haul, and they're really high on both of them. There's a kid named Noble Johnson who has been out injured, and he also had an off-the-field issue to deal with, a traffic-related incident. But he was a highly recruited player out of Texas who might get his chance to play at some point this year once he gets fully healthy. So it's a crowded room. They got plenty of people, and they got people with enough skill and talent to be good at wide receiver, but they don't have, unless, the expectation is more could emerge as that next great NFL prospect at wide receiver.
Who would you guess that would be? All of them. Best guess. One guy.
Well, I mean, we haven't seen Moore yet, and I'm sorry, did I say Moore? I meant Wesco. Wesco's the one who's having the big camp. We haven't seen him in a game yet, Wesco or Moore. Of the returning guys, the ones that you're looking at, man, I would guess best NFL possibility would be Randall.
Okay.
Because of his size, his strength, his size. As long as his knee's healthy, he has pretty good speed as well. So I would probably put him in that category.
Yeah, he's like 6'4", 220 or something like that.
Yeah,
that's
he can go up and get it. Yeah, he can go up and get it.
And the tight end, Brenningstool, had a pretty quiet 498, almost 500 yards receiving last year, which is pretty good for a tight end. So how does he compare to other good tight ends that have come out of Clemson?
He's that hybrid tight end. He might be somewhat similar to if you remember this kid, Jordan Leggett, a tight end who can.
I remember Leggett.
Yeah. He can get down the field. He's probably not quite as bulky as Leggett was, but he's a little bit more of a slender tight end. But he's a hybrid guy who can split out and actually kind of give you another wide receiver look over there.
Okay.
So you can have him detached. You can have a receiver in the slot. And you can have a wide out. You can really load it up to one side depending on where you put him. But he's very good. He can catch the deep ball. He can catch the underneath routes. He can give you a little blocking on the line as well. So he's their best tight end. They really like this freshman Betancourt, who apparently is having a real good camp. And then Josh Sapp, who's the son of Patrick Sapp, former Clemson quarterback who became an NFL linebacker. And Josh has gone in there and given them some good play as well. So you'll probably see all three of those at one time or another during the season.
So the true freshman Betancourt is somebody that might get some playing time this year. Keep an eye on him.
Well, based on what we're hearing from camp, again, we don't get to see any of this. We only can go by what Dabo Swinney or the coaches might share. And he said some good things about Betancourt coming off their scrimmage. They had a situational scrimmage yesterday, and he mentioned Betancourt as a guy that's come on and is probably going to get some playing time for him.
Well, he's one of the top recruits from this class, and I'm not holding anything back from two freshmen at Clemson. So if history tells us something, a couple of these guys are going to make some way this season and produce. Okay. Oh, by the way, the one thing I did notice, and I don't know if this is the offense, if this is Cade, but most of the guys that I saw, their average is not very high, not very deep. It doesn't look like they have many deep threats. Now, is that the receivers? Is that Klubnik? Is that the style of the team? Or, they just need to get some better down the field passing options with these receivers. Which is it?
Yeah, that's a great observation. One of the big changes in the Clemson offense from the big-time days of Deshaun Watson and even Kelly Bryant and then Trevor Lawrence, when they were, going to the playoffs, winning national championships, their deep striking threat and their quick striking threat, that's been lost in their offense. Okay. Personnel-wise or strategy-wise, whatever you want to point to. Garrett Riley, their offensive coordinator, when he came in, it was thought that he would bring this explosive offense theory with him. Where he was previously, they scored a lot of points. He had a very explosive quarterback, and but they ran the ball a lot. His offense is really based on a balance between the run and the pass. He likes to run the ball a lot. So, do they have
that was TCU, I believe. Was that the
Yeah,
year?
yeah.
Was he the coordinator when they went to the championship game?
That's correct.
With
Yes,
Max
yes, he
Stugate?
was.
Okay.
Yes, and then when Clemson, when they fired their offensive coordinator and brought him in, it was like, whoa, this is the steal of the century.
Yeah.
But I would say he was the disappointment of the century last season because they didn't look anything like a cohesive, well-tooled offense. And they didn't do anything from an explosion standpoint. I mean, it hardly took any deep shots. So those of us who were used to seeing Clemson's offense were like, where's the deep ball?
Yep.
So now it could have been personnel or it could have been philosophy. I don't know. But that's got to be one of the things they implement once again, if they can, in this offense. I can remember with Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, of course, now you're talking about generational quarterbacks, but and they had outstanding receivers too. You could pretty much count every game on their third or fourth offensive play. They were going to take a deep shot. Yeah. And oftentimes, especially on the road, they would love to stick you quickly on the road. Here you are, you come out of your locker room and your fans are going crazy. Yeah. You got all this excitement. You're going to play Clemson, rah, rah, rah. And you kick off to the Tigers. Okay, first down, they run it up the middle. Second down, they might throw a quick out. Then on third down, they've slipped a receiver behind you and they've hit you for a 75-yard bomb. Yeah. It happened time after time after time, and it would just suck the air out of the stadium and break the spirit of the opponent. And they would go on and they'd win by, 35 or 40 points. Yep. That's been missing from their offense for one reason or another.
Quickly, you mentioned Watson, and I know this has nothing to do with it, but with what's going on right now. But obviously, you know as much about his playing days here and about Watson's ability. He's getting a lot of criticism, contract, what happened in Houston, and all. Point I'm trying to bring up here, though, is ask you is as a teammate from what you remember. And just as a man, for what you remember, do you think Deshaun is? Are you expecting Deshaun to actually kind of pick things up again at some point? And he's just too good. And he's, say what you want about his personal issues and all the distractions and everything. He's going to show him. He's going to show him. Or are you a little bit concerned with whether or not he's ever going to get it back?
Well, I mean, if he's healthy, I think he will get it back. He's too much of a talent. And I mean, I don't know him from a personal standpoint, just a professional standpoint, having been around him during his time at Clemson and covering them. So this is a guy that could do no wrong at Clemson. I mean, this is a guy who played on a torn ACL to beat South Carolina in the rivalry game. I mean, they had it just braced up as tight as it could. Oh, yeah. He refused not to play. He was going to play, and they told him you couldn't hurt it anymore, so let's just put this big old heavy brace on it, tighten it up, and he went out there and played. I mean, this was a guy that was just on and off the field. He was all you could ask for. He was building houses for Habitat. His mother, a great story. She lost her tongue. She had tongue cancer. She lost that, so he had to communicate with her a different way. And take care of her. I mean, it's a great story. And of course, he was a great football player. He changed everything at Clemson. I'll never forget his first game for Clemson was against Georgia in Athens, and he wasn't starting. Cole Stout was the starter. And they put him in late. They put him in the second quarter, I think it was, and he moved them down the field. And he threw his first touchdown pass was a laser that went like it whipped right by 3 Georgia defenders in the end zone. They were like, whoa, where'd that come from? I mean, that's how strong his arm was. That when he did that, people knew that they had a special talent. Now, he still didn't start until they played Florida State. Yeah, they were very careful about how they did that. But getting back to your question, I mean, the things that happened with him in Houston and all these lawsuits and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his personal business. It's out of certainly seemed to be a little bit out of character from the guy that we covered at Clemson. But when healthy and given the right people around him and the right scheme, I don't see any reason why he can't get back to being a high level NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I've been defending him. I believe he does have it left, but like you said, it is all about getting healthy. Because I've just been referring to last year when he played with he injured his shoulder. I think he had a torn rotator cuff against Baltimore in that game. Same type of situation as you're talking about. Wouldn't come out of the game. Went 14 for 14 in the second half. I think they were the last team to beat Baltimore in Baltimore, and won the game. Didn't see the field the rest of the season. That's the last memory you would have of the guy. So try to understand that the kid is tough. The kid wants to win. The kid that has, and the players around him know that. They know who's tough. They know who buys in. Now I've got another story to add there with his torn ACL at South Carolina. So I like it.
Yeah,
I've got
that was his freshman year too. That was his freshman year,
okay.
And yeah, that was quite the effort and quite the performance he put on in that game. I mean, he was throwing it, he was running around, and this big old bulky brace on his knee, and then he had surgery. He didn't play in the bowl game, if I remember correctly. I don't think he played in the bowl game because he had knee surgery soon after that game.
Okay, now on defense, and we've got some more stories about true freshmen. So the edge rusher, TJ Parker, last year, 5.5 sacks as a true freshman. Throw in another player who played, I don't know if you could tell me whether or not he's going to be playing linebacker or safety, but that's Khalil Barnes. Also a very good true freshman season last year. So again, 2 more true freshmen coming through for Clemson on defense. Let's start up front. I see Parker there, but I don't really see much else from my eyes. So what else is there in the pass rush department for Clemson?
Of course, they lost some good pass rushers off of last year's team. They lost Tyler Davis right in the middle. They lost both of their they lost him. They lost really both of their starting defensive ends. Xavier Thomas was one of them. But what they've done, you mentioned Parker, they brought him along last year, and he proved that he can handle it. So he'll start. The other defensive end, believe it or not, is going to be Peter Woods. They moved him outside.
Okay.
They'll play him he may play some inside technique as well. But their plan right now is to start him outside at 315 pounds. Their 2 inside guys will be Peyton Page and DeMonte Capehart.
Okay.
With Vic Burley coming back from injury and getting a chance to play. And those are the primary ones. You might see some Caden Story. Dabo Swinney has mentioned Stephilion Green as somebody who's caught his eye. But those are the guys in the middle. And on the edges, really Parker and Woods and Cade Denhoff. And I would say probably maybe some A.J. Hoffler in there as well. Jaheim Lawson's put on a bunch of weight, and he might become a factor too. So those are the guys that they will rely upon. It's a good group. I'd say Parker and Woods are probably the most highly acclaimed of that group. I don't know that across the board, like they've had at Clemson in recent years, that they are as talented or as deep up front as they have been in recent years, but at least that front group's not bad. Capehart and Page have been primarily backups in their careers, so now they'll get their chance to start and see what they can do. And
so Burley, though, is the top. He's like the number 3 in the middle.
I would say so. Now, he's coming off an injury. He did participate in their scrimmage the other day, and he drew the attention of Dabo Swinney afterwards, who said, Burley's back, and he looks real good. So probably get something out of him. And you mentioned Khalil Barnes. He's actually going to be their nickel as it looks right now. Their one question on their defense is one corner spot. Actually, got a couple of questions because of injuries. It looks like Avion Terrell is going to start at one corner position. That's AJ's brother, the guy that starts for the Falcons. And Jaden Lucas, has been dealing with a shoulder. He's coming back into practice. It looks like something he's going to have to play with.
Okay.
Shelton Lewis was a guy making a move at corner, but he's been dealing with a lower leg injury. He's missed practice, so he's kind of day-to-day. Brandon Strozier and Tavoy Fagan and Ashton Hampton are all freshmen who've caught the attention of the coaches. They've been talked about. Another one who's a freshman is Corian Gibson. So they've got as many as really 4 freshmen who might figure into their rotation at the cornerback spots.
Okay.
And then as far as the safeties go, it looks like Kylon Griffin and R.J. Mickens will be the starting safeties, and Khalil Barnes will be the nickel. I'm not sure, when in the case of when they want 3 linebackers on the field, but you want to have Barnes on the field, you can run him in there and put him at one of the safety spots as well.
All right. And then at linebacker, they, of course, lost Trotter. So Carter now becomes the man. And a lot of people are surprised that he stayed. So Clemson fans really happy about that. Wade Woodaz is going to take over for Trotter. Is that the case?
That appears to be the case. He's a guy that played a lot for him last year. They really like him. They really, I think they kind of view him as one of those linebackers they've had in the past, like a Jamie Skowski. Just a guy that makes plays around the line of scrimmage, doesn't break assignments, knows what he's doing out there. So, yeah. And his brother has joined the team. His brother's a freshman recruit at linebacker. You're going to see a lot of Sammy Brown, a true freshman who's very highly touted. You're going to see a lot of him. D. Clayton, Kobe McLeod, going to figure into it, and Jamal Anderson. All those guys are going to figure into the linebacker rotation spots as they run their linebackers in and out.
It looks like Ourlads has put McLeod at middle linebacker. Who do you think is the starting middle linebacker? You think it's McLeod or Woodaz?
I would say it's Woodaz.
Woodaz, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I would say there are 2 starters, and the 2 linebackers set would be Carter and Woodaz.
Okay, that's what I thought. Let me make sure we get that right. Okay, and then Brown, I believe he's the top recruit in the class, the entire class. So we've already talked about several true freshmen. Who would you just, I don't know if this would just be a guess, but just from what you've heard, you have, if you had to pick one of them that you think would probably have the most production this year, could you do that? Could you single out either Brown or one of the receivers and say, one of these guys I think might be the most productive?
Yes. Well, just based on how much they're going to get a chance to play, certainly Wesco. I mean, Wesco could very well be one of your starting receivers.
Okay.
When they kick it off against Georgia, he might very well trot out there with the lead group, which means he's going to have a chance to take a lot of snaps, catch a lot of passes. I think Brown's going to work his way into that linebacker rotation. He's got great speed and instincts. He was a big-time running back in high school also.
Okay.
So they like his ability to run at linebacker. Ashton Hampton at corner is probably going to be a guy, a true freshman, to get a lot of snaps for him as well. You can probably count on him getting a lot of playing time, especially with the injury situation they have at corner. So
okay.
I would put those 3 in the freshman watch position.
Hampton too. Okay. Yeah, we didn't talk about Hampton, so that's good. I'll put him down. All right. So let's before I let you go, give me a couple of breakout players. These don't have to be, of course, true freshmen, but players that have not been noticed. Like, for instance, I'm going to guess Adam Randall is probably one of your breakout players, but you tell me. If you had one on offense and one on defense, somebody is going to break out and find himself on the national stage that he wasn't there before. Who would you pick for each unit? Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. So if you're going to go that route, you're going to have to be talking about somebody in a skill position area on offense, I would guess, not a lineman, because, I mean, they don't ordinarily get noticed all that much. So somebody who's kind of a veteran that might have a breakout season for them, I'm going to say watch for Cole Turner, a healthy Cole Turner. If he's able to play in all 12 games, he's a veteran. He's savvy. He's got excellent speed. He's sort of that kind of safety blanket receiver for a quarterback. Somebody you look for in a tight situation. So I would say Cole Turner.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Now you mentioned, Randall healthy, but I mean he's played. And Turner has played some as well, too, but he's just been dealing with a lot of injuries. So I would say Cole Turner on the offensive side, and then on the defensive side, I would look at, I would probably say, give me DeMonte Capehart, because he's been a backup guy playing behind some excellent defensive linemen ahead of him. Now he gets his shot, and he's a big guy. He's been in the system for 4 or 5 years. And so, I would say watch for him to kind of handle his own business in the interior defensive line and kind of keep that tradition going of quality defensive linemen on the Clemson defense.
All right. And by the way, how special is going to look? Any word yet on how the kicking game might be?
Yeah, Aiden Swanson is back to punt again. He's been there a long time, 43 yards per kick last year. No problem there. Looks like the freshman Nolan Hooser, who's from North Carolina, is going to beat out Robert Gunn and be the place kicker.
Oh,
that's where it stands right now. Going into the last couple of weeks of practice before the opener, he stands to be the number 1 kicker right now.
All right, I like it. There you go. Now, lastly, before I let you go, what do you think about? Give me a prediction. What do you feel? What's your feel? What's tingling as far as this Clemson football team for 2024? Are they going to surprise people? Even though Phil Steele's got him as the best team in the ACC, I know the ACC's down a little bit, but still, there are a lot. We opened up the video talking about how a lot of people seem to be down on Clemson. They're ranked, ranking indicates that. So this could be. Do you believe this is going to kind of shut people up, or are you a little bit apprehensive about what kind of season they're going to have?
Apprehensive, yeah, I would say so. When I voted in the ACC kickoff preseason poll, I actually picked them third behind Florida State and Miami. Well, I just looked at the quarterback situations. I mean, Miami's got the Ward kid transferred in, and he's supposed to be super duper special. I mean, he was picked as the player of the year. Hadn't even taken an ACC snap yet. And then, of course, Florida State with DJ Uiagalelei, who Clemson fans know extremely well. Their thought is, well, if they do for them what he did for us, then we'll beat Florida State, But he probably grew a lot. He probably grew a lot when he was at Oregon State, and he is who he is. He's a big quarterback who can run. He's got a big arm, and when given time and protection, plus that game is down there. Plus Florida State hit the portal hard and brought in replacement players to replace some of the big-time players that they lost. They're not afraid to go to the portal. So I see Clemson. I mean, my expectation is they lose to Georgia and they lose to Florida State. So that's the 2 losses. And then, I mean, there's the possibility they could lose to NC State because Grayson McCall, the new quarterback at NC State. Well, you should be. Yes. You should be. He's special.
Yes.
See, so, Klubnik might not even be in the top half of the quarterbacks in the ACC when you look at them on paper. Syracuse has the transfer from Ohio State, who's a really good quarterback, who started at Ohio State. He's now there.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech has the former quarterback at Texas A&M, who had a big year for him last year.
Yeah.
So the point is, Klubnik is still an unproven commodity to play at a championship level.
Yeah.
And if he plays at a championship level, then things really, really good things can happen for Clemson. But we just don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see what he does in Atlanta. If he's a different type of quarterback and he doesn't make those mistakes. And look, that game, though, with those defenses, I mean, these are 2 teams that once played a game a couple of years ago and there were no offensive touchdowns. Remember, Georgia beat them. on a pass interception return. There were no offensive touchdowns.
Yeah.
You might very well have that kind of game when they meet this time, though. The Georgia people believe, from what I've been reading, that the Georgia offense is as good as it's ever been, even though their starting center is hurt and may not play against Clemson. They brought everybody else back on the offensive line. They got the quarterback back. They got the transfer. They got ETN. All Georgia has to do is keep their players out of their cars for the next couple of weeks, and they will field a very dangerous team against Clemson. So for the Tigers, yeah, I've got them losing at least a couple of games. Might still get into the playoffs, but they're going to be walking that tightrope between 2 and 3 losses, if you ask me.
Yeah, big season, no question, because when a program starts to go one way, it's real hard to stop either the positive or the negative momentum. And Clemson the program can really use a move back up. Because you start keep slipping, and you just wonder whether that they're ever going to get out of it.
Well, I'll tell you how bad it's gotten from the national perspective. And again, these are national guys; they're not around the program on a daily basis. They're opinionators like everybody else. But Jerry Palm, one of the nation's leaders at projecting the NCAA tournament and projecting the bowl games. So he just came out with his projection yesterday. And he did not have Clemson making the playoffs. He had them playing in the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte against Rutgers. So that's not what Clemson fans want to hear.
No.
That's a cold slap in the face. Now, he could be way off. It's entirely possible. But I go back to the point that I made earlier, and that is the national view of Clemson has dipped.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. And like you said, once it starts going down, it is hard to stop. And it's up to Dabo Swinney to make it stop.
And we'll see if Klubnik can. Look, I'm not sure you want to start with Georgia, but you're gonna start with Georgia. So put up the best performance he can, and hopefully it'll be a springboard for the rest of the season in a positive way, because you definitely don't want it to be in a negative way. So we'll see how that works out. And he still has one more year of eligibility, Klubnik?
Let's see. He would have actually last year was like his redshirt freshman year.
Oh,
so he's got this year and 2 more. Yeah, he's got this year and 2 more.
So he could be around. He could be starting quarterback for Clemson for a couple more years
if it works out.
Yeah, if it works out, yes. If it works out.
I mean, I've gotten where I don't count on anybody being back for another year with the way kids are departing. Yeah.
So, and there's nobody right on the team right now, quarterback, like a young kid. That's the next guy.
This is the scary part for Clemson too. They don't have a proven backup. Christopher Vazina is the backup, and he's a redshirt freshman who's not played. So you've got really just Klubnik and nobody else in that room who's ever taken a snap. So they were a little bit, from the standpoint of a backup and some experience, very thin from that standpoint.
Okay, so Vizina is the number 2 behind Klubnik. Got it.
Yes, Vizina. Right.
So, Phil, great talking to you again.
You too, sir.
Hopefully the team has a really good season, and we'll get an opportunity to talk during the season. In the meantime, anybody out there that wants to follow Clemson football or South Carolina football or anything like that, similar, you can check out the South Carolina Sports Talk Network, and that's also available. You guys stream, of course. And I'm assuming, do you also have a YouTube show, a channel there? Is it under the South Carolina Sports Talk Network?
Yep. Just go look for Sports Talk SC or Sports Talk Media Network. We've got, we stream on X and we stream on Facebook. We stream on YouTube. Of course, we do our show over radio stations around the state as well. So we got the audio stream, the video stream, the radio stations, got the whole deal.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Thank you, pal.